Welcome, everyone. I would say good evening, good morning. I guess I can still say that, even though this is a premiere, so I'm filming it a little bit ahead of time. But Future Purple should be out there in chat. So, Future Purple, let them know you're there. Give you a second because I know you're a little bit of slow typer. Sorry, let out our secret. But with that said, I just want to welcome everybody and say thank you so much for joining. It always means so much for me for y'all to come in. Thank you last week to our wonderful guest, Banana Killer, aka Ash, or maybe I should say Ash, aka Banana Killer. Thank you so much. As you can see, cloud gaming just isn't her thing. But as y'all know, as long as you're gaming, you're good with me. It doesn't matter where you are, how you're gaming, you just game, and you should be good with me. And with the world, it makes the world a better place. With that said, though, this week we have like a pillar of the Stadia community, one of the biggest channels in Stadia, someone who has inside information. Well, wasn't insider at one time in the gaming industry. We're going to dig a little into that. And is just an amazing content creator, always giving us the latest news. And that is none other, because this isn't about me. It's about the person in the title. So I present to you none other than Clive.
Yes. Talking about me.
Yes.
We're still talking about me. Oh, you're talking about me. I wondered who you were talking about then. Yeah.
Oh my
Marvelous.
God.
Sounded really good, that person. I was interested in that person.
Oh my God. Clive, how are you today?
I am great, and I'm touched and honored to be on the Shades of Purple. I've been looking forward to this. I'm a great admirer of yours. I didn't tell you that beforehand, so I'm telling you now. Live on the show. There we go.
I'm going to start blushing here, even though I think I have some blush on already. But but thank you so much for joining, Clive, and I'm a huge fan of yours as well. I know. Usually we're talking. I'm talking to you through chat, and you're doing your show with Lord Kensington. Lord
Kensal.
Lord Kensal. Yeah. So look at that. Can we order that, Clive?
Yeah, if you're nice.
If you're, because I know you always have this gear on, and I'm always like, how can we order that?
I have all my T-shirts. It's all Lord Kensal T-shirts. That's all it is.
But Clive, my audience comes from many different consoles, platforms. Some of them aren't gaming. Some people are looking to get back into gaming. Obviously, you share your name with us, but you also have Lord Kensal. Can you explain to us who Lord Kensal is and who Clive is, if you can, in a nutshell?
Yeah, so Lord Kensal's my gaming tag. Has always been my gaming tag from Xbox days. And so whenever I game stream, I used to stream on Mixer. I used to stream Sea of Thieves on Mixer back in the day. And, I streamed as Lord Kensal. And so when I set up my YouTube channel to do other stuff other than gaming and stuff, it was Clive Illenden's channel. But I still wanted to do a bit of game streaming now and then, but I just wanted to keep it separate. So Lord Kensal does that for me over on his Lord Kensal channel. And, there's no pressure on him to do anything other than just enjoy himself and play games. So that's where that came from.
Okay. Well, I will have them both linked down there below. So Future Purple, don't let me down. Have those linked, both the gaming channel as well as Clive's channel, down below for everybody who wants to check out that amazing content. But Clive, the show's about stories. It's about the gamers. So this is going to probably be a little bit about Lord Kensal. It's going to be about Clive as well. But where does it begin with you?
In terms of gaming, it's odd because I don't know whether I have false memories or real memories or imagine things. But I do seem to remember, so the very early days, I seem to remember a friend having an Atari 2600 or whatever, and going like around about Christmas and going around his house and playing like just Space Invaders or Pong or whatever it was at the time. And then, then I vaguely remember going to the local electronics shop whenever they had a new console in and standing there playing it until we got kicked out by the, shop assistants or shop managers or whatever, because we never, my parents would never have bought me, a console or anything like that. But my dad did buy me a ZX81. Now I forget what it was called in America. I remember Rock knows what it was called. But anyway, a ZX81 was by Clive Sinclair. And it was basically a home computer, but it was tiny. It was about that big. And it had a touch keyboard. I can just press a membrane keyboard type thing. It wasn't like a clicky keyboard, just like a touch keyboard. And he bought it out so you could program it using BASIC and stuff like that. And it had like an amazing. I tell my kids now it had the amazing memory capacity of 1K, which is just.
Oh, yeah, we're blowing it out like the water there.
A word doc isn't even that small. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, the point, and interestingly enough, and then that was superseded by the ZX Spectrum, which I never had, but everybody had, and that really kickstarted the sort of game development industry in the UK. That's the root, and many senior members of the gaming industry in the UK now started off as teenage boys publishing games for things like the ZX Spectrum and stuff like that. And there's you can draw many a lineage and a route down to them all being ZX Spectrum and ZX81 owners back in the day. So I had that, and then that had people used to publish programs, and you used to have to type them in manually. Crazy. And I used to get a magazine called Your Computer, and at the back it had people submitted their programs. Sometimes they were just simple things or simple games, and then the games used to come on cassette. I'm really showing my age now. And you play.
What's a cassette, Clive?
Yeah. Like you played it in a mono tape player, and it kind of just made like a fax noise. And it loaded up the game. And I remember one of the, you used to get like simple versions of Missile Command. And I remember there was, I had this 3D maze game, which was amazing, blew me away. And it just basically dotted lines, like pixeled lines. That was what it was. And a dinosaur that came around the corner, but just did like the shape of it. So I remember that. And then just arcades, and then nothing much really. Other than that, I'm always being interested, but I never really got into any of the early consoles until much later. When I had when I was working, and then I had a friend. I used to go around his house after we'd been out for a bit of a drink and whatnot, and then maybe we'd go back to his house for a little relax, and he'd fire up Mario Kart and stuff like that, and few drinks and what other stuff, and we would play Mario Kart until 3 a.m. and stuff like that, and I always remembered it. And then I also remember my nephew getting an N64 and for Christmas, and I was staying at my sister's then. It was her son, and he got GoldenEye, and all Christmas Day just him and I just play GoldenEye. So I kind of always remembered that. And then when I thought, I'm going to buy myself one of these, and I bought myself an N64, and I played all the, Mario 64 and all those things. But when it was when I got a job in the gaming industry that then I just bought all the consoles for research reasons. There was like a proper excuse. So then I had the OG Xbox, PlayStation 2, and then the GameCube. So I used to have them all stacked up.
That's right. So I mean, I think our audience, Rock, you mentioned Rock, great friend of the channel. Also, thank you, Rock, if you're out there, for coming on the channel. He talked about this in the UK, how gaming in the UK was very different than gaming in America during this time, right? And that in America, you really did have like the Atari generations, into the Nintendos, into the Segas, into the Super Nintendos, and so forth. But yours kind of follows that other trajectory where it was like this almost home computer.
Yeah, it was bedroom boys coming up with games, selling those games. It most used to be in the tabloids, 17-year-old driving a Ferrari because he'd created Jet Set Willie or whatever, and then published it on cassette, whatever, and made a shed load of money, more money than you'd expect for a 17-year-old to make. So there was sort of that real entrepreneurial spirit, and as I said, many of those people went on to become well-respected legends, have been knighted for their contributions to the gaming industry since then, have been in there. Many started many companies that are familiar today, UK development companies. I mean, the UK development scene, they like Codemasters, create some of the best racing games out there, to develop one of the best racing engines. Now, of course, they're owned by EA. Take-Two up in Rockstar, whatever, up in Dundee, which has its own sort of gaming little sort of micro industry up there because of Take-Two and all of that kind of stuff. And so there's Rare, of course, like from Leamington Spa and Warwick, and they got bought by, they were the first sort of Western company to be trusted by Nintendo to make a Nintendo IP property. And then, they kind of then got bought out by Microsoft. And of course, they've created Sea of Thieves and stuff like that since then. But I think they did some Donkey Kong game originally, but for Nintendo. But it was one of the first sort of non-Japanese companies to be trusted with the IP. And many of these founders of these companies, when they were teenagers, programmed on the ZX Spectrum, and I think things like the VIC-24 and the Commodore 64 later as it came out, and were bedroom boys, and they just came up with all these games. So yeah, that's where the UK kind of development industry sort of started.
No, definitely. And it's, I know the UK is always, even though it's not a Nordic country, it is always represented very well at the Nordic Games Conference in their displays. And you always see the UK. Well, they're always there everywhere, but I definitely, thinking about that, the conference back in May, and thinking about some of the showcase of games that came out of there, there's a lot of different UK developers and publishers, or I guess developers more than anything. So definitely rich history. And then just like, well, unlike Rock, Rock kind of like went into gaming. He went the PC gaming route to make that transition into kind of the generation of consoles. Seems like you went into it kind of accidentally. Your nephew had a console, or you were doing nights out with your friends with the Super Nintendo, Mario Kart. Seems like you kind of like wasn't necessarily a laser thing, but it just so happened to be there, and yet something you liked.
It was, and I much prefer the I've always preferred the console approach, because it just works. You get a game, plug it in, and it works. You don't have to go, oh, I've got the wrong graphics card. Oh, I need to upgrade my graphics card. I wasn't into PCs that much. I'm a bit into them a bit more now, but that's through content creation, ironically enough, rather than gaming. I'd rather keep, my son keeps wanting to install games on here, and I refuse. I've given him my previous PC that I bought for console creation, and he can put as many games on that as he likes. But this one is for creating stuff.
Not gaming.
Not gaming. No, I'm not. So I've always, much preferred console and, controller. It's not built to be a jack of all trades. It's built to be a gaming device. That's my kind of philosophy. And I remember, I sort of drifted as I sort of, settled down, have kids. Slowly but surely the consoles sort of disappeared or got stuffed in the loft. And I remember that sad moment when I have to turn my office into a nursery, and all the equipment goes away. And then, other than having like a Wii for when, with the kids, I didn't really kind of have a console for ages and ages. But then my life changed slightly, and the decision making became a bit more easier. Let's just say that. And I decided, and I said to the kids, you know what, we need a console in our lives. Come on, into the car, down the shop. And this is about 7 years ago, whatever. And they were getting into Minecraft and stuff like that. I said, come on, let's go and buy an Xbox. And so we went off to the shop, just bought an Xbox, just me and the kids, and we never looked back.
Xbox One.
Yes, Xbox One. Yeah,
Xbox One. And so
that got from sort of drifting in and out of sort of gaming a bit, got me well back into it. And originally, and then I bought like a gaming laptop for them to play Minecraft and stuff. And then I started playing, and I got sucked into the world of Minecraft. And when I used to have my weekends by myself, I used to spend hours, just get lost in it, like proper hours. And I had no one was there to say, you can't do that. Like I just would think it's my time doing what I want, mate, and just play Minecraft for hours and hours. And then I think it was Overwatch. My daughter said, "Oh, quite well. I see lots of YouTubers playing Overwatch. I think we should get Overwatch." So I got Overwatch, and then I became obsessed with that. Played it non-stop, and then Sea of Thieves came out, and then that was it. Like I used to be quite a mono game, gamist, like a one game, and then I just hammer it. I get obsessed with it. Yeah, and so So for the last 7 years, that's what I've just been doing. Is just like, and then I say with the Xbox One, and then I started streaming on Mixer, Sea of Thieves, and there was a small community of streamers that just stream Sea of Thieves stuff, and we support each other and jump on each other's streams and stuff like that. And it was kind of, and Mixer was a really cool place to be as well. I think it was just because it was.
So you really were in the Microsoft ecosystem, Mixer,
yeah.
You were like, they bought it.
Yeah,
we're gonna stick it out until you don't.
And I made a decision as well. I think you do make a choice in life, for whatever reason. It's like an Apple or Android choice. You do make a choice. Back in the day, you make a choice. Most people do. You go, I am a pony or I am a Xbox guy, and I just thought, nope, pony, everybody has a PlayStation.
Not for you.
I'm not everybody, mate. I like to go. And at the time, the Xbox was I thought, in my view, was slightly the cooler thing because everybody has an iPhone. Not necessarily the best choice. Anyway, so it's subjective, but that's how I kind of looked at it. Like I just thought it's cool to have an Xbox One because everybody has a PlayStation. It's the obvious. The PlayStation is the obvious console to have because it outsells the Xbox One, and that would be the obvious choice. So I went.
So you wanted to be different.
Yeah.
Interesting. I never heard someone explain their choice.
I think we do it subconsciously. We do make choices. I think, people, for whatever reason. And I think then you become this sort of stupid subconscious loyalty to it. It happens.
No, gamers don't have loyalty to anything. It's all about the games.
Yeah,
or not.
But when you're making a £500 decision or £300 decision, you have to make a decision. That back in the day, that's the thing about the console. Like you have to make a decision. No, not everyone has the luxury. When it was my job, like I could justify having every console. Perfect, like it was my job.
And
I need to know,
So we're gonna get back into this Xbox, PlayStation loyalties or lack thereof in a second. But you hint around this on your podcast, on your show a lot. You're like, hey, I've been in the game industry. Here's what I would think, what's going on, so forth and so on. You bought 3 consoles. Like you kind of just skipped through this, right? You said, hey, I was doing N64. I was doing work. I had consoles for work. And then you just skipped it. What can you give us a little bit more? Like, what did you do? Why did you need 3 consoles? Like, why did they bring you in? Who brought you in?
So this was for Lego, and they were just getting into interactive games. And they had they launched a PC game called Lego Island. Great game. It's like Grand Theft Auto, but in a you're delivering pizza, your little Lego minifigure driving around a little Lego town. And the guy who created it had friends who were in garage bands in the US, so sort of punky kind of pop punky rock bands, and they did all the songs in it. So it was really cool, actually. It was really cool, and it did quite well. So they wanted to expand the IP into gaming, but at the same time they also wanted to expand the IP into TV and film. And they were looking for a legal and business guy, of which I am sort of at the time, to do all the legals on it, to do the legal and business deals, basically legal and business affairs, as we would call it. And so I was working at the BBC before then, and I saw this job. And as a kid, I loved Lego. Absolutely. I was a member of the Lego Builders Club. I still am a massive fan of Lego. I have very happy memories of Lego. I bought all my kids Lego. I have in my conservatory just here, it's got Millennium Falcons and police stations and fire stations. I bought my kids, and even though they're getting older, I just refuse to dismantle them. I love Lego. Always have Lego. So to me, it was like a dream job. And I thought, I reckon I could probably wangle this, even though I don't think I have that much experience. I was doing contracts at the BBC, doing talent contracts and negotiating the contracts with talent, on-screen talent, and doing the deals with the agents and stuff. And I had a bit of distribution background because I ran a little video distribution company where we bought the rights to films. So I had a bit of rights knowledge and a bit of contracts knowledge. And so, this kind of make it until you fake it. I went for it, and for whatever reason, they loved me. And they gave me the job, and I kind of created my own title out of it and all this kind of stuff. But then when I got there, it was also like, okay, we've got you because of the TV side, but we need you to look after the games side as well and do all the distribution deals, do the deals with Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, and do deals with the developers, because we would hire the developers to make the games, do the deals with them. And so I kind of had to learn from the ground up on that. And then so I used to go to see developers, and we say, okay, we want this sort of game, what can you do for it? And then do the deals with them, do the contracts with them, work out the royalties and the back end and all this kind of stuff. So it was basically doing contracts. And from that, of course, it meant that I had to go to the games industry events. So I went to E3 every year. We used to have a stand there, and I used to fill my diary with the meetings and have meetings with developers and publishers and stuff like that, and meet with EA and Activision and Vivendi. At the time it was Vivendi, and THQ. I remember meeting with Karine Yap.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was trying to figure out where the Karine Yap, because you mentioned her, and Karine's amazing. For anybody who does not know, Karine is one of the business development leads for Stadia, and she is very much involved with what games come to the platform on Pro, especially. She is kind of the curator. She has a team over there. There's a couple of them, but Karina. And so I was trying to remember, and Karine started her career at THQ.
Yeah, and she was sort of head of licensing. So she, there were slightly different deals because there were licensing deals. And then they used to do a lot of things. I think it was they used to license stuff and then to release the Game Boy stuff or Game Boy versions of some of the stuff that we did and things like that. So I kind of sort of vaguely remember meeting her at E3 and things like that, and doing deals. And then also the job, obviously we wanted to I was so lucky because the job took me all over the world. I mean, before, when as my previous job at the BBC, I was literally stuck in one location. I probably had no interaction with outside parties other than agents. All the other interactions was internal interactions. And then I went to Lego, and it's a completely different world. And I got to fly all over the world. As I say, I used to go because the developers that we hired were all over the world. They weren't just UK based. We would we went to all over America, different, sort of, there's different
Different
hotbeds.
hubs. There's like
Yeah,
little
hubs.
hub.
Yeah. So, which is prime. In Vancouver, I remember massive, major develop, Ubisoft in Canada and stuff like that. But, I remember going to Vancouver and doing meetings in there and stuff like that. But we wanted to expand, into the Asia Pacific. So, of course, that meant going to Japan and Korea and Taiwan and all of that kind of stuff. And I went to Sony in Japan and had meetings at Sony in Japan and things like that. Went to Nintendo in America, had meetings. So it was quite exciting time for me. It was like, but
I mean, I think for anybody who's into games or into entertainment, this would be just exciting because you're getting a sneak peek. And so, I kind of have a feeling like I trying to figure out in the current games market where you're fitting in, and obviously anytime one of these deals goes through, legal always comes through and is doing the terms. And
so I had to do so. So from business affairs is the way that I look at it. So now I work in TV and I do the similar sorts of thing in TV, but the business affairs role is a combination of sort of business development and legal. So I did the deal. I agreed how many millions of pounds we were going to spend on development, and then I did the contract. So it wasn't just I didn't come in and do the contract. I did the deal.
You're actually doing that. So did you have financial analysts there to kind of project cash flows through?
So we would work, put projections together, work out what kind of budget we want, we're willing to spend or what we thought we'd, get in and stuff. And then that would give, then I'd have a remit, a mandate effectively within which to negotiate for if it was a development deal, to negotiate within that mandate. And usually take a developer to Legoland in Billund in Denmark, and you save yourself a few million because they were like kids. Oh yeah, where do we sign? This is great, Lego. Because all developers love, if you're into gaming, like if you're a developer, you're going to love Lego as well. So for them, the opportunity to create a Lego game as well was often a real. It was an easy sell of a lot. With developers, getting developers on board was an easy sell because it was Lego. Who doesn't love Lego?
So talk to us about I think one of the mysteries, right? It's not just in popular knowledge, but Wall Street, we talk to some of them all the time. They don't know what's up and down a lot of times in the game industry. They're getting better. But can you talk to us a little bit about what does a typical deal look like? Like you're here, right? You have Lego. You have that. Yeah. I'm sure there's now Lego's massive enterprise and all sorts of horizontals of the business. But how does that work? Like, all right, so you get instructions, or is it just your idea coming up? Like, talk us through
it can vary. So it can be that we say we want to race. It can be as simple as saying, we want a racing game. I think so. High Voltage did a racing game. Basically, it was a Mario Kart type thing. Like it was great. It was a really good version, and they did it on the N64. So if we're talking to developers, it may be we want a racing game. I work with the producers within Lego. So Lego had its own set of producers who would basically guide the project through, had its own QA team who would do all the testing and stuff like that. But then we would, go to a developer, and sometimes a producer would come with me, and we would select potential developers who had experience at, it was a racing game, at racing games. So we went, we did stuff with Codemasters, we'd go to them, or, with High Voltage and stuff like that. And often I may have a producer with me, and then we'd say, this is what we want. And then we'd get them to pitch the concept around our IP. So, and if it's just to say, okay, we just want to is around the Lego IP. Pitch us the concept, your racing concept that makes it different, utilizes some of the DNA of Lego, the building, what happens. So I remember in the high voltage game, it was like a Mario Kart, the cars would fall apart if you got hit by. So instead of going over like spinning stars, where you go over spinning brick pieces, and you'd get power ups and stuff like that. So quite kind of simple. So then once they'd got the pitch, they'd write, and they'd put a budget together as well, and say, yeah, we think it will cost X million pounds to develop, and then we would do the deal, and the deal would take the form of basically we're paying you the development cost, but that's an advance.
So are y'all a publisher?
Yeah, we were publishers. Yeah,
so Lego's the publisher, y'all. So between the developer, publisher, Lego's acting as a publisher.
Like first party. So and they were like first party developers that we would be working with effectively. And then that means I also have to do the deals with PlayStation and Microsoft for Xbox and stuff like that, so that we could publish on that platform. But yeah, you go to a developer and you'd say, okay, we'll give you X million dollars or whatever it is to develop this game as you've pitched it or whatever. And then that X million pounds would effectively be advance against sales. So, based on a certain royalty, whether it is, anywhere between 20, 25% or something like that. I can't remember now, but something along those lines. So then once that's surpassed, then they would start, once they'd recoup that's, whatever it is, that was 7 million, 10 million, whatever it is. If you made enough sales, then they would start getting a share of the sales. But up to that point, we'd be recouping our development advance that we given them to make the game. That's how it basically works. So you cover your costs as a developer, and you put in an overhead and all that kind of stuff, and then you hope the game sells gangbusters, and that's all basically cherry on the top. That's all, and that's where you're going to be paying all your bonuses to your, hopefully to your team and stuff. So that's how that works.
Interesting. Did you ever have you obviously worked with Sony, what we sometimes call big Sony, right? Japan Sony, not Sony America. You're working with Microsoft, and did you ever or are they all the same? Did they have different? Nintendo. We always talk about sometimes the mentality of these different or companies, their DNA, what they pride themselves on. Was there ever one that you prefer working with versus the other?
Well, I mean, Nintendo is obviously very traditional, so it's a lot harder sort of meeting with them in Japan. Although I think most of the stuff I did with Nintendo in North America, so it was slightly easy to kind of deal with because we know how they operate. But I do remember when we were in Japan and my boss came out, the MD of the Lego Interactive came out with me, and we went to see Sony in Japan. And the way that, it's still very similar now, that it's very old fashioned the way that Japanese companies work. And you have to earn the right to get the meetings, so that you have to respect there's a process to go through. It's not like America where you go in and it's, hey, let's do lunch, let's have breakfast, let's do a deal, all that kind of stuff. No. You have to sort of work your way up, sort of fight through the layers of politeness, as it were. So you meet the slightly junior execs, and then if you pass that test, you go to the senior execs and so on and so on. And I remember, and I can't remember who it was at the time, but I remember what we were trying to do was forge a slightly closer relationship between Lego and Sony, two big IPs, get them together, see what we could do. So that's why we were, we went to the heart of the animal, as it were, right into, the lion's den. We went to Japan to talk to PlayStation specifically, and we knew it'd be a long process to sort of get to the senior management level, but we were in a meeting and it was just full of the execs, sort of middle and junior execs from Sony, Japanese execs, and my boss was there, and sort of my representative in Japan was there, and we were thinking this is going to be a long, slow process to get to the top of the food chain. But then in walks then the head of Sony Japan into the meeting room, and all the junior execs, they all stood up, and then they were all bowing, and I oh my God, and we sort of stood up and bowed and showed our respect. And he was curious because, he also recognized that Lego was a big brand and needed respect. So we kind of had a shortcut straight to the head of it. It's like, I couldn't believe it, and he just came in and, I mean, we we just, we didn't do business then because that's what you don't do. That's our first meeting. But you meet and you show respect and exchange cards and stuff like that. But I was blown away, and even my boss was sort of like, "God, didn't expect to meet the head of Sony Japan so quickly." I mean, meeting in the equivalent in London, Sony London, was easy. You know, Ironically enough, I met Phil Harrison when he was in Sony in London. But yeah, so it was just very exciting at the time, especially going to Japan. So, I mean, because it's like an epicenter of gaming in a way, or console gaming at the time, PlayStation and stuff like that.
No, and I think that's actually what you mentioned this on one of your shows before, and I don't think people quite understand what it means in talking about Japanese culture and what it means for a company like Stadia to have a deal with a company like Capcom. Partnership there, because obviously Capcom is a top 25 publisher in the world, and in gaming's kind of you have your top ones, and then you have like literally thousands of other companies. And so for everybody who's like a Stadia fan out there, getting Capcom, it's just like Clive kind of explained, where you're kind of building up. This is the same thing in companies. You kind of have to chew off that little piece, prove your worth, go up to the next one, go up to the next one. And so that's why it's super important when you see games come from Bandai Namco's, Capcom's. These are all kind of primers to some of those bigger fish in the Japanese IP catalog in companies.
Phil, I wouldn't be surprised. We've got to think about a lot of these deals, especially with Capcom, were probably done in 2019. Though that's when those deals were done, and when obviously Phil Harrison was more visible. But Phil Harrison has a lot of respect in Japan. I mean, he was one of the first non-Japanese people to. He was head of Sony Studios worldwide, not just head of Sony Studios in London. Like worldwide, they gave him that job, and that's a Japanese company giving somebody that responsibility on a global level is that's not Japanese is significant. So he has the and like anything in business, it's about relationships and contacts and stuff like that, and that is especially true in Japan, I seem to remember. So it would not surprise me that and this is why Google employ people like him as well, because it gives what they're doing credibility. That would be the intention, and because he would have the contacts to be able to pick up the phone and talk to the head of EA or whoever it is and form those relationships. So it wouldn't surprise me if those were forged by his existing relationships that he has in Japan, having worked at Sony and being respected within the industry, that he could kind of, create those connections in Japan. And then since then, obviously, there is a Stadia representative, a Japanese Stadia representative based in Japan, which is probably keeps oiling the wheels of those relationships with Bandai and Capcom and stuff like that. So if I've come across him before. So he's quite, I think he's a youngish guy, but he's based in Japan.
Yeah, no, it's no coincidence, that there is a nexus there between Phil Harrison. We mentioned Korean Yap, and I have to mention one of my favorite people to just meet and talk to, and just the energy that he is, Jack Buser. Cannot forget Jack Buser also is there at Sony, who is now leading the Google Cloud Gaming division. So remember, Stadia, Google Cloud are kind of separate entities there, but this is about Clive. It's not about Google. So, with that said, so thank you, Clive, for explaining that and explaining your role in the knowledge you bring and just kind of like the expertise when we talk about these things. You know, a lot of people would say, oh, Clive is just, you know, talking old man on his rocker. You're not old, by the way. But, you know, the proverbial old man on the rocker talk and um, where did you get this source or whatnot? And what I try to tell some of those people who are pseudo wannabe journalists is that you're actually bringing in expertise analysis. And this isn't uh, just, you know, looking at the stars. This is actually looking at a lot of how the industry works. So just thank you, Clive, for just proving again why your channel is the success it is and what a gift it is for the community to have you.
I think
Here.
just yeah. So what I tried to do is just try to put some context to why things appear to be the way they are, and based on the experience that I have within the industry. So and because things aren't always black and white headline clickbait titles, there's nuance to this, or there's levels to this, you know. There's gray areas, you know. There's detail that it's not simple this or that, black and white. It's not binary, it's complex. And if you understand the way the industry works, then I think you can maybe shine some light. May not be right, but maybe it just makes sense of the world, rather than just being, you know, a couple of guys down the pub going, you know what they ought to do? They ought, you know, and like, well, yeah, you know, it's like those you see on Reddit. What they ought to do is buy Nintendo. And it's like, no
Not gonna
idea, have you? You've like just no, that's not, you know, well, Google have got all the money, they should just buy. No, that because it's not, Google's not into, that's not their business. You know, Microsoft have made it their business, almost 50% of their business. You know, they're like a major part of their business. I don't know if it's 50%, but they, you know, they've made
27%, but who's counting?
Yeah, but the point is that is a big chunk of their business, and so the decisions of that. And back in the OG Xbox days, they had to make a $1.6 billion decision to either kill it or continue with it because of the ring of death. That's what they were told. That's what it was going to cost. Now they made the decision, and it turned, you know, arguably it turned out the right decision. But that was where they were at. You know, Google, I hate to break it to people, but Stadia is Google see where the future is. They have the technology. They're an engineering technology firm. They see where the future's going. They've seen it happen with music. We've seen it happen with TV. The technology is there so that it can happen with gaming. And Google want to be there, creating almost the operating system, as it were, the operating system and platform for the future of gaming. And they will build it over time, but they're not going to put all their eggs in one basket in one single bet and then spin that wheel and hope in 20 years time, you know, it all comes home to roost, whatever. They're going to take their time, and, you know, you just have to be patient with that and build and slowly, because you have to bring the people with you on this journey. And as we have seen, that, you know, people are hard to change from their set ways, but slowly but surely, like coastal erosion, you know, it will become, cloud gaming will just become the norm, and we won't even know when it happened. You know, we'll just look back and go, oh, do you remember the time when we didn't do it like this? It's not, you know, don't expect any wham bam thank you ma'am moments. I don't think there will be that. It will just be, you know, over time, people just pick these things up, and next generation come through, and it's just, that's how our game, isn't it? It's just on the telly. Just got my controller. I'm just playing that game on the telly. That's all it is.
So, I mean, you know, Clive, we talked about how you got into gaming. It seems like you're almost like an accidental gamer in a way, right? We talked about you were in the industry, right? You were actually in one of the sexy parts of the industry. Like, I think the industry has a lot of parts, but you were definitely in one of the sexier ones. When we talk about well, I think of it as BD, but you actually explained that it's kind of two roles over there, BD as well as legal. Um, And so you did that. And then you got brought back into gaming, right? Xbox. So you were doing it as your job. And you hear a lot about this when people who actually work in something that we feel is passionate, it becomes work, right? It's not necessarily the funness because you see the sausage being made. You see kind of like you have resentments. You're critical of things, but you come back. Xbox brings you back because you want to be a cool person.
Yeah.
You're playing,
I want my kids.
You want your console to be as cool as you.
Yeah, I want my kids to respect their dad. You know, love it. That's how it's. You know,
one thing I love, and I'm going to get back to it, is how many gamers, because most of the people we bring on are adults, and they have kids, and how many times, like, I just am amazed at the parenting that is in the gaming community, and what they want to do for their kids or trying to play with them. I mean, we had Lo-Fi Monk. Come on, he became a Minecraft game content creator, one of the biggest in the world, by the way, if y'all did not know that, because he wanted to connect with his kids. And
yes, same with the Minecraft here, and it took me over. Like I just bought originally. I thought, well, they're at that age, they want to get into Minecraft. I'll buy a gaming laptop and I'll get the Xbox, and and then it became I sort of overtook them. Although interestingly enough, my 17-year-old is she still loves playing Minecraft.
I mean, a lot of people. I mean, it's one of the biggest played games, one of the most streamed games there is. But yeah, I just want to say, like, so many Ray, Gaming Cyber, you'll remember his story. Just Jack the Slip, just everyone. Miss Tracy, so many people in this community.
I think there is that whole generation. Like when we were told, "Oh, games just a waste of time," or whatever. But now we've, when we were kids, but now we've got kids, and we want. It is a great way. The amount of times I play, my son's upstairs on the Xbox and I'm down here on the, the Xbox or whatever it is. Or even like, someone plays, PUBG on Stadia and he's playing on the Xbox upstairs, and we're having a whale of a time, teaming up, doing stuff. It just, it's a great bonding experience, and even I remember what, all three of us playing Sea of Thieves together, and it was on a special event. They just started doing some sort of DLC special event on Sea of Thieves, and my daughter was on the gaming laptop. I was on one Xbox. My son was on the other Xbox, and we were sailing together, and we were just having an absolute riot. And I just thought, that's what it's like, family time, isn't it? When do you get, other than watching a film together, do you get to kind of play in that way with the kids and be so engrossed, and so I think I highly recommend it, to encourage your kids to play games.
It's amazing. I too. That's why I pointed out, because I think y'all are doing a great job with that. So but people know you. A lot of people know you in the cloud community as a Stadia person. So where did we make this jump from Xbox One, phenomenal console, phenomenal system, to Stadia? And you still play Xbox, so I don't think it's like you just left it behind in the dust.
Yeah, I do. I mean, the only thing I really play on it is probably occasionally I feel in the mood for a bit of Sea of Thieves again, just for old nostalgia's sake. But most of I hardly, my son plays on his gaming PC and he plays on the Xbox, but I play almost exclusively on Stadia. And it was like, I'm a big fan of Google. So when they announced, Stadia, I mean, I knew about xCloud coming along, or Project xCloud as it was, and I tried that out and I did a review and on my YouTube channel, and that kind of really helped the YouTube channel. Actually, it really, that video got a lot of attention and was my biggest videos at the time. And so that really helped. And so when Google said, "Oh, we're going to be, going into sort of cloud gaming and, bringing our version. And I kind of thought, well, and I've said this loads of times, lots of people, I just thought if anybody can, Google can. And so I was very invested in that journey. And so, and I wasn't disappointed, when my, as soon as they announced the Founders Edition, I was like, gee, whatever happens, I want to be on the ground floor in this. I think it's very exciting and very interesting technology. And I reckon, as I said, if anybody can make this work in terms of, not having any lag or latency and that kind of stuff, I think Google can, because I'm already like blown away by, simple things like Google Assistant. Yeah, but Google Assistant and stuff like that, and just the and how much more advanced it was than something like Alexa, whatever, And to me, xCloud, when I first tried Project xCloud, it was like Alexa, whereas Google Assistant was, understands context and can you almost have a conversation with it in the way that you couldn't with Alexa. You could just only ask Alexa very basic things back in the day. And so I just thought I applied, okay, well, if Google does that to cloud gaming, they're going to be ahead of everybody else. They've got the know-how to do it. And as I say, when it arrived, the 21st of November, as I joke, 2 days late, it didn't arrive on the day. Oh my God. And I fired up Destiny 2. And having played Destiny 2 on the Xbox One, and then I played it on Stadia, and it looked and played better than your Xbox One. And that's fact. That's just how it was, because the Xbox One was like, 30 frames a second or whatever like that. And you're playing at 1080, 60 frames a second. So it's already better on Stadia. And it was at that moment, you realized. It was at that moment, I thought, yeah, they've only gone and done it. It just looked and played amazing. And so from that point on, I thought, yeah. And since I already had a YouTube channel in which I talked about, tech stuff and things like that, in my head, I always thought, I want to do stuff about Stadia if it works and stuff like that, and my experience of Stadia when it came out. And so I kind of ummed and ahed about. I reviewed, Stadia when it first came, because I'd done that for Project xCloud when they had their beta program. I'd done that, so I thought I'd do the same. But then I started reading all this, negativity about Stadia, like it doesn't work, the lag and latency is terrible, and I'm like sitting there going, but I'm playing it. It's not, what are you talking about, And then talking to people about it, I remember, interestingly enough, although I'm not in the gaming industry, because of my gaming industry background, I got invited in my current job to go to a meeting because they know that I'm in, have gaming experience. And it was because I'm working TV now, but it was to do with a gaming project we're working on. And I remember they got a consultant in from the gaming industry to help consult with them as well. And I remember on the train journey going to this meeting with him talking, I was saying, oh, this is just for, what do you think about Stadia? I can't wait for it in Stadia. And he just go, nah. And he was like just a sort of cynical guy. Like it was, before it even launched, nah, it won't work. Nah. Who wants that? Who wants that kind of stuff? And I just thought, I never, I just thought, I'm excited. Aren't you excited about new technology? Like, aren't you excited about the prospect? At least to, like, the idea of it. To me, it was like, how can you not be excited by this? It was like, it just blew my mind. And but yeah, so when you start reading all this stuff and like people telling you, oh, it can't work, it won't work, it doesn't work, the lag's terrible, the latency, it's crap, doesn't work, it's terrible. You're thinking, well, this is not my experience. I'm having a wonderful experience with this, like I don't understand. And like, I think many people, you thought, you know what, I'm going to start talking about my experience, because we need to correct this stuff that we're seeing everywhere. And so that's kind of where that side of it really kind of started. And, I continue to play Stadia, and you play it because, the sheer convenience, the speed, the fact that I don't have to take games off to put new games on. If I'm in the mood, I can just go through the catalog and go, what do I want to play? And I've got a choice I said to somebody recently, the thing about, Xbox and PlayStation, yeah, they have loads more games that you can play, but can you play them straight away? How many games can you actually play straight away? On the Xbox, you're probably limited, maybe 10 games, maybe you could fit on a console. So you're limited to maybe 10 games that you could play straight away. I'm in the mood to play a game right now, this second. You are probably limited to about 10 games, other than xCloud. But on kind of games you download, you have limited space. So yes, you have lots of choice, but if you're in the mood for something and it's not on your console, in my case, that's another half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, I've got to wait before I can play it. And so for me, the fact that new games come up all the time on Stadia, whatever my pro games, my library is constantly growing, and then there is such a good variety of choice that it is a case of what am I in the mood for, and you can just flick through the catalog and go, I fancy playing that. Boom, it's playing. So ironically, I would argue you have more instant choice than you do on console right now. And many people talk about the sheer convenience of Stadia, and I think that is such an overlooked aspect of it. Until you have it, until you've experienced it, you don't quite realize. Remember my son's friend came round, and they wanted to play some game together on their PC, which meant that he had to download a game on this computer while he's
Oh, and we know you love people downloading on this computer.
But it took ages. But they were in the mood to play then. But they had to go out. They went out to the skate park for an hour, which is not so bad because it means they're out and about. But and then come back. Is it loaded yet? Downloaded yet? It was like, where's the with that instant, like I'm in the mood to do something now. Especially kids, you're in the mood to do something now. And to me, that's what whenever I get that kind of, my son, could we just download this thing on Xbox? I'm kind of, really? Downloading? That's so 20th century, man. Get with it, son.
No, well, obviously, but as long as you're gaming, Clive, that's what I say. As long as you're gaming, as long as you can play it, good with me. Even though some people are more spoiled than others, I will admit some people are more spoiled than others, and how they do it. So you talked about, obviously convenience. And I think as we get older, I was just talking about this in the Clouded Game Reviews, time, you want to enjoy your time, right? Like every kind of second, you really get down to what you enjoy and you spend time doing that. And so it seems like you're kind of in that boat, that kind of gamer. Rock often calls it the resource-rich, time poor. Yeah. Is the community, I think he says, with it. And so and I think for those types of people, Stadia works wonderful for them. And so now that we're here, now we're at cloud gaming, you kind of told us this is the future of it. This is where it's going. What do you think about this current environment? As someone who was in the industry, and when I talk about the current gaming environment, I'm talking about not just the games that are coming out, but also this idea of aggressive acquisitions by companies. What are your feelings behind this? That's driving a lot, both of these issues, whether it's games being released, it seems like with bugs all the time, or every single time we hear about a gaming company, it's about one being bought or one buying another, or interest in buying. What do you think about this? Because, it's been here a while, right? We have had mergers, we've had acquisitions in the past. Yeah. But it really seems, and I don't know if it's just because information is more prevalent, the gaming industry, people have seen the potential, but it just seems like every week one of these things are going on. What do you feel about that? Or how do you feel about that?
So, I work in TV at the moment, and television, traditional television, is, I see a lot of parallels, and television, as I say, is going through an existential crisis at the moment. The business model of television has been unchanged for 70 years effectively, really, other than say in the 50s, the advance of advertising. Other than that, technology moves on, you go from black and white to color, high definition and stuff like that. But the business model, making television programs, broadcasting television programs at set times, distributing them around the world, has remained unchanged effectively for 60, 70 odd years. But the impact of Netflix and everything that's come after that, I mean, Netflix are, as we are known as a disruptor, they are a disruptor. And a disruptor basically means a company that comes into an industry and literally disrupts the way things are done. It's not just a new industry entrant. It is a disruptor, and Netflix have changed the game. They have changed the way that so not just changed the industry, but they've changed the way consumers consume that product. Consumers have consumed TV in the same way for 50, 60 years. Now it's the norm. We expect box sets. We expect to be able to watch the whole series in one go. We are not necessarily having, appointments to view. That still exists, but it's not in the same way that it did before. And I work, for the BBC, and we've had to change the way that we work and think dramatically. We're a traditional TV company, but we've had to change the way we work, think dramatically because of Netflix and the way that people now consume TV. Less people are watching television. And so we saw it in music. Music had an existential crisis. How can we monetize what is happening? They had to come up with a business model after it had kind of happened, after the change in consumer behavior had happened. They then had to come up with a business model. And now people don't buy, I'm talking in generalizations, but people don't buy albums now. You just listen to whatever you want to listen to, music, and you break up. Albums, used to listen to albums, you start at the beginning and go through the tracks, and the musicians would order those tracks in a certain way to draw you in, tell a story or whatever it is. But now you just go to Spotify and you get recommendations, and you just and you have, access to virtually every musical track ever written, whereas, so it's just changed. And so that changed the music industry. Now the television industry is changing. And so I see exact parallels in that with gaming. And one of the things, in order for TV streaming, to work, is about Netflix is about IP. And if you're just if you're just licensing everybody's IP, eventually they're going to kind of say, well, actually, we might just set up our own. We've got enough IP to set up our own channel, i.e. Disney. I mean, they've got so much IP, it's ridiculous. So they set up their own channel. And then once the licenses they had, most of the Marvel stuff was on Netflix, especially in the UK. Once those licenses came to an end, Disney just took them right back and, established their own. And now Disney is surpassing Netflix and subscribers and stuff like that. So IP is absolutely crucial. Catalog is absolutely crucial. And one of the quickest ways to do that is to acquire companies that produce a lot of content. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing consolidation in order to build up catalogs, because that is the future. However, Xbox know that. They investing so much in cloud gaming at the moment and stuff like that. And that acquisition is all about basically building, I hate to say it, but the Netflix of gaming. That's what they're building, and that's why we're seeing such aggressive acquisition. And then, of course, once one company does it, then the other things that people start building fences, don't they, and acquiring, or building empires and acquiring more IP to build up their catalog. Because ultimately the catalog will be the king. I wouldn't say content per se, but the catalog is the king.
So
you've got to supply that chain, especially if you're going to subscribers. You've got to keep supplying that demand.
So I like this thing, right? Because you've talked us through like these different iterations of existential crisis, right? You've mentioned here music industry and their crisis that they have, and we've talked about traditional media, the crisis they've brought about. I think I could probably also add in there print media has went through an existential crisis as well over the time, and very publicized, right? These different crises. Gaming potentially is its moment right now. I kind of go back and forth on this myself. So the question becomes, right? Because we hear this IP is king. If IP is king, and if Microsoft is, willing to throw out just Bethesda, we'll just use two of their recent purchases, right? $75 billion, Bethesda and Activision, if it goes through. Stadia says, okay, we want to be the platform there. And Stadia says, hey, we are no longer have Stadia Games and Entertainment. We've gotten rid of our development and publishing arms. Everybody always looks at the developer. I think the publishing arm is actually the one that's the kicker there. Where does that leave Stadia then?
Well, I think Stadia is really about perfecting the technology and providing a platform for it's like to me it's like providing, they want to almost provide an operating system so that the EAs of this world or whoever it is potentially if they use their stream technology could it's ready built. But I think there's like we talk about Netflix, but there's not just Netflix. There's so many streaming services that provide a service across all over the world, not just Netflix and Disney and who there are lots of niche kind of platforms and markets. So, but I think for Xbox, the difference is the risk is bigger for them. They're a bigger organization. If they don't aggressively, they know where the future is. Stadia is new, and it's hard for a new company to come in, and so and they obviously Stadia had big visions. We're going to make big bets. But I think, and we've read, and if what we read is right, when they saw the amount of money Xbox were throwing at that, they just thought that's not a route that we are willing to, because we're just a startup. That's like being a gambler and saying, well, we'll make a few bets, but then betting your whole house on red. Whereas Xbox, Microsoft, although it's 60, 70 billion, whatever it is, money that they're spending, they can afford to make that bet, if that makes sense. But they have to also make that bet. It's a difference between the size of the relative parts of the gaming size of each of the companies, and Stadia is not. Was never there to compete right now overnight with PlayStation and Xbox, and I'm not sure where people get this idea, other than the fact that for examples use, the comparative power of the Stadia used Xbox and PlayStation as an example to demonstrate where they were in terms of their computing power. Not that, and then people took that away as, oh, they're trying to be like Xbox, they're trying to be like PlayStation. Yeah, but they're not trying to be like their business overnight. That would be crazy to come in and say, right, we are on the same level as this 30-year-old company and this 20-year-old company that spent billions and billions building their IP, and we just walk in and we expect to be on the same level. Of course they didn't think like that, but what they did see is they know where the future is, and they're building towards that future. Xbox know where the future is, and they're thinking, damn, if we don't start changing now. So Xbox is having the existential crisis. Google's not having the existential crisis. existential crisis happens to people who are already in that industry and see the future, see the runes, and see that actually it's changing from their traditional business model of selling £500 boxes and then getting a royalty on every unit that a developer or publisher makes of your, sells an Xbox version. They have to pay Microsoft a royalty on each disc effectively, or each sale they make. They're seeing that business model changing in the future. So the existential crisis is on PlayStation and on Xbox. It's not on Google Stadia. In the same way that the existential crisis is on existing broadcasters that I work for, not on Netflix, not on Disney Plus. Well, it was on Disney, but that's why they created Disney Plus. But if you're new entrants, the risk isn't on you. You can take your time because you're already in the future, as it were. You're building where the future will be. You just got to be ready when everybody else gets there.
So I think it's kind of interesting what you've just laid down, because obviously Google gets compared, Stadia gets compared to Luna as well. They all get compared. I always say if you watch Lo-Fi Monk's Cloudy Thoughts, he has me on there sometimes. I always talk about how these are all kind of different companies with different strategies. They're not all head on. But if I understood what you're saying correctly, right? Xbox has to do it because they already have a large business that is changing in the future. Yeah. If we believe this is they have to make a change eventually.
Yeah. Otherwise it'll be too late.
Too late.
And they've seen it could basically, the Xbox and PlayStation's looking around. And so I work at the BBC. So it's basically they are like the BBC, and then Netflix comes in, and Netflix didn't come in overnight and instantly, suddenly become giant. But before you knew it, like I said, like coastal erosion, Netflix and chill is in the lexicon now as a word. That's over a short period of time. YouTube now is watched, it eats into TV time. And so from a gaming perspective, your Xbox and PlayStation, although PlayStation a bit slow on the uptake, but that's maybe because they're a traditional Japanese company and they're a bit, slower on these things. But Xbox know where the future is, and they already realize if they don't start turning the oil tanker, because you can't turn the oil tanker on a sixpence, as they say, it takes time. If they don't start turning that oil tanker around and facing it in the new direction, then they'll be too late. And I think that's why we're seeing aggressive movements from them, because they're basically getting ready for the future. They have to, because they know their traditional business model is going to dramatically change. They want to get a head start on their rival, which is Sony, plus any other entrants into the market who start building their business from scratch in this new business model, which is your Luna and your GeForce Now, arguably, and Stadia and stuff like that. And Xbox want to sort of make sure that they're there as well.
So would you say, question, do you think Stadia is going to have its own original IP? Do you think that's going to be something that they're going to do in the future? Or do you think they have a different business model altogether?
I think potentially, yes, they could put it that way. They could, if, because Netflix Netflix started off basically by allowing you to watch, by acquiring licenses on certain IPs, so you could watch the films and TV shows and stuff like that. It took them quite a while to get to the point where they kind of thought, we need to start creating our own content. Our own, like House of Cards was one of the first things that they kind of did and stuff like that. But there was quite a few years before they got to that stage. And it's once that they'd sort of started slowly dominating this new area of streaming that they felt confident, and also the need to invest in their own IP and content. And then we see the same with, Amazon Prime. Amazon again, they're not stupid. They look around and see what other people are doing, and then they basically do their Amazon basic version of it, which is effectively what Luna is. And eventually they'll get to the point where they realize, in the same way that Amazon Prime starts creating their own content as well. It's interesting because one of the issues in the TV industry is Amazon and Netflix are investing so aggressively in their own IP, and that they've set up there's 2 brand new film studios, like full-on film studios, have been set up in the UK over the last about 12 months. One is Amazon, set up their own film studio in the UK, and the other one is Netflix, their own. We've got plenty of well-respected film studios like Pinewood and stuff like that. Star Wars was made, whatever, and James Bond movies are made there and stuff like that. But such is the need to have a conveyor belt of productions that Amazon, and in order to create their own IP, that Amazon and Netflix have set up their own massive film studios in the UK to do this. So but they initially they never, they took a journey to get to that point. So if you ask me, could I see a scenario in which that Stadia might do that? I think, well, yeah, if eventually it becomes the de facto platform that everybody plays on their TVs and stuff like that, then they know they'll have the player base in order to make that investment to start creating their own IP. But I think they're taking the slow but steady path to that, because they've seen that actually trying to compete with Xbox out the box with $8 billion acquisitions is just not a gamble that Google was really, I think, willing to make at the time. They didn't think they'd have to make that kind of bet so early on in what is a very, very nascent business.
No, I think there's quite a bit of people who believe that Microsoft made those bets early on, seeing the partnership that Bethesda, because Bethesda was one of the first partners. Activision, we already know that they had multi-$100 million deals with Google Cloud. Bungie from Sony, another one that showcased the power of Stadia. There's a lot of people who believe that those were actually counter-offensive bets by those people, to knowing that's.
I can see that would make that's perfectly, I think, a logical perspective to take. Makes a lot of sense.
Well, Clive, I think we can talk forever, and I think we're going to be talking a little bit longer after the show. But I do know I want to respect your time as much as possible. I want to respect the audience's time as much as possible. Hopefully, if you're willing, you'll come back on the show for us to talk more about this. But just your expertise, it's just phenomenal. And I think it's truly to get someone who's actually been there, who's been at the deal table, who's been at the conferences, not just to look at the new games, but also to talk to the players in the room, is just truly phenomenal. So thank you so much, Clive, for taking this time. And I know Future Purple is going to have your stuff downlinked below, but where can people find you, and when can they find you talking about stuff?
Yeah, every Monday night, 10 p.m. UK time is the Stadia Monday Night Chat, where I try to inform, educate, and entertain you. So 10 p.m. UK, and that's over on YouTube/Clive Illenden. And that's, we cover off all the Stadia news and views, but we try to put some, like I said, some context and understanding behind some of it, and maybe look at some key features that are worth discussing that week.
And Lord Kinsel, where can they find? Do you have a schedule?
Lord Kinsel, he doesn't really, although hopefully he will be doing some FIFA streams when FIFA 23 arrives. I think it's something that he's keen to do. So,
so
look out for those.
Soon.
Probably Tuesdays, 9 p.m. UK times, but I haven't quite decided yet.
It's 5 p.m. Eastern, y'all. 5 p.m. Eastern is 9 p.m. UK time. Or no.
It will change in the winter.
Yes, I had to think about that. Maybe it's not the time I just thought, but you can find them down below. Future Purple, make sure they're in there. Also, Future Purple, put them in chat as well, just because some people just like to click. They don't want to go look for it. So put it in chat.
Make it easy.
Make it easy on them.
Ease of access is everything.
Yes, and we just talked about how as we get older, we want every second matters. We really get really important on that, or dwell on that. But with that said, and y'all know, you can find me 8 p.m. Thursdays. That's where you found me Eastern time on this one, Shades of Purple. And then I do my gameplay on Sundays at 8 p.m. And hopefully, I think I'll probably still be playing Guilt. I haven't, middle of future. If I
Right,
beat
yeah.
Guilt, we get to do it. A Stadia exclusive, just talking about Stadia exclusives there. But you can find me doing that. And then hopefully, well, let's just say Jeff, Janak, and myself are maybe have a little project plan going on. You might hear a little bit more about that. Not too sure, Jeff. Let me know if that's a little cat out the bag too early there. But thank you all again. Clive, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. I respect you quite a lot, unbelievably.
Well,
because you say certain things, and I think she knows what she's talking about. She knows stuff. She knows. I recognize it. It's like I think, okay.
Just look at the stars, Clive. I just look
pearls
at the
of wisdom. I just think this is not just some person down the pub who once played a game. This person knows stuff.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Clive. That means a lot. But we're all about building community here. And so thank you for sharing your story. And just for everybody else, this has been Purple Haze. This is Shades of Purple. And as always, the proof is in the playing. All right. Take care, everybody. All right.